Hi, everyone. Welcome to STEAM for All's October guest lecture, where our theme for this month is computer science. My name is Elaine, and I am a sophomore at Arnold O. Beckman High School. I will be your MC today. We are so excited to have everyone here. By bringing in various guest lecturers specialized in different fields of STEM, we hope that this event sparks your interest and provides you with a more beautiful insight into the wide variety of academic routes you can take. Before we get started, I would like to first run through the structure of the event.
I'll listen to it.
Okay, so first of all, the first part of our event today will consist of short introductions given by the three guest speakers outlining their occupations, interests, and fun facts about themselves. Then from 2:10 to 2:40. So, okay, make sure to mute yourselves when you're coming in and turn on your cameras. We want to see all of your beautiful faces. Okay, so then from 2:10 to 2:40, we will move on to questions STEAM for All has specifically chosen for the panelists. These questions will provide insights into the advice they would give to people interested in computer science, their personal experiences in their occupations, and much, much more. The third and final part of our program will be from 2:40 to 3 o'clock, and this is a Q&A section. So if you have any questions at any point in the guest lecture, make sure to type out your question in the chat box. So what I mean by this is make sure to type out your name, your grade, your school, and then the question you have for the guest lecturers. For example, you would write out John Doe, 9th grade, STEAM High School, and then your question. We are so excited to hear all of your questions, and don't be afraid to ask as many as you want. This is a great opportunity to learn more about the field you are interested in from highly skilled individuals. Okay, so without further ado, let's welcome our guest speakers. Our first speaker is Catherine Kui. Catherine is a student at Harvard University and is actually a STEAM for All alumni. She graduates in 2024 and is studying computer science and statistics. Catherine, thank you so much for coming. Please introduce yourself and talk about one or two fun facts other people don't know about you.
Yeah, sure. So I think, as you already mentioned, my name is Catherine. I'm a junior at Harvard studying CS and stats. I'm really glad to be here today because I think I was in a lot of your positions just a few years ago. I guess a fun fact about myself, well, I was going to say I'm a STEAM for alumni, so Elaine kind of stole that one, but I guess my favorite color is yellow, and yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. And it was really interesting. Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Charles Wang, who is currently studying math as a fifth-year PhD student at Harvard University. Charles graduated from Georgia Tech with a Bachelor's of Science degree in computer science, chemistry, and math. Charles, thank you so much for coming. And it would be also great if you could introduce yourself and give us a few fun facts about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Elaine. Yeah, so I'm Charles. I'm a fifth-year PhD student at Harvard in math. So I'll be graduating this year. And a fun fact about me is that I like going on bike rides.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so our third and final speaker is Professor Sheu, who is currently a professor of EECS, or Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, at the University of California, Irvine. Professor Sheu is also an IEEE Fellow and the founder of the IEEE International Conferences of Semantic Computing, or the ICSC. He is world-renowned in semantic computing, robotic computing, and artificial intelligence. Professor, thank you so much for coming. Would you like to?
Hello, your voice is broken, so I'm not quite sure because I'm pretty far away. I'm on sabbatical. I'm in Taiwan. And so in case the connection doesn't work, forgive me. I'm just really very far. All right, so that was quite some time ago that I went through your age. I graduated from Berkeley I got my PhD there in EECS, and I started my teaching career in at Purdue University. Then I moved to California back quite some time ago, and I've been teaching there. So I've been working on areas related to artificial intelligence, including semantic computing and others. So I hope to. I was not quite sure about the format, so I guess it's a panel like arrangement. I'll be very happy to answer your questions if you want to ask. My favorite color is yellow too. All right.
Great. You and Catherine really have something in common. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that my Wi-Fi is breaking up. My Wi-Fi is actually kind of bad, so forgive me.
No problem.
Okay. So the next part of our computer science themed guest lecture actually encompasses giving panelists questions that STEAM for All has chosen. We hope that after this event, you all will have a better understanding of what the field of computer science entails, both during and after high school. So let's start with a quick warm-up question to get the round going. What is everyone's favorite food? Feel free to answer in whatever order you guys want. Catherine, would you like to go first? Or Charles?
Okay, yeah, sure. My favorite food is sushi.
I'm a big fan of ramen.
And mine is it my turn? Mine is fried rice. Now, unfortunately, I'm allergic to eggs, so I have to give up my favorite.
That's great. Okay, so now we'll move on to our first question of the day. What should I do now to perform better in computer science classes in college and beyond? So feel free to answer whenever you guys are ready.
We take turns?
Okay, well, I guess I can start. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
So yeah, one can be very helpful to go to office hours. So these are sort of problem sessions or sessions where the professors or other course staff will answer any questions that you have about the course. And it can be very helpful if you're not sure how to start on problems or how to work on them, or think if you get stuck partway through. And I think this is one thing that's quite different between college and high school, which is that there are these sort of dedicated times you can go and ask any questions you like. So it can be very helpful to ask for help during and outside of your class.
I can go next. I think similar to what Charles has already said, learning to ask for help and when to ask for help is a great skill to develop. But even more so, I would say because I'm currently in a lot of CS classes, and I think something I realized is computer science is such a quickly changing field, and there's always so many different frameworks and languages and things like that. So I think it's really important to start learning how to learn things on your own. I think in school, for example, in high school, teachers teach you a lesson, and then it's kind of you kind of just have to learn what the teacher tells you to. But I think in computer science, just the technology and stuff is changing so fast all the time, that's really important that you can learn how to learn on your own, whether it be a new language or a new framework or a new concept. So I would say that's really important.
Okay, my perspective. Well, number one, I strongly suggest that you build a good math background. I think math will be used very intensively in some of the fields of computer science. So that's number one. Number two, of course, I think you want to build your programming skills. Well, there are different routes in computer science that can lead you to success. But no matter which route you take, you will need programming skills, especially when you're young, because you have to demonstrate what you're thinking is correct. Number three, is that you want to increase the breadth. I often tell my students to take another major, if not just by reading um, the material from other areas. For example, biology, for example, business, for example, medicine, you name it. So it's very important that you use computers to solve problems. You not only study how to improve computing, but also how to solve problems using computers. So the more applications you know, the better. Yeah, these are my answers.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really, really insightful. Okay, so now let's move on to the next question, which is how did you get better at computer science, or through what programs, applications, or study habits? Feel free to unmute whenever you feel ready to answer. Okay, so Catherine, what like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, as for study habits, I don't know. I think it's hard for me to think of any besides like just like, practice. I think especially when you're learning a language, like a CS language, I think just like any other language, you have to practice a lot using it so you become comfortable with it. Other than that, I think what Professor Sheu said in the last question is really important. I think if you have the basics down, so like, basic math and things like that, it gets a lot easier to build on top of these basics. So I think just to make sure that like when you're taking like your intro courses, or like even right now when you're taking your math courses, to make sure you really understand everything. Because if you like are missing some of the basics, it gets really hard like as you continue, as you like learn more and more things. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, okay, I can go next. So yeah, so I think to echo what was said before, so one thing that really helped me was trying to apply what I learned, say learn about a language or something, to actually write some programs or write some code to help myself solve a problem. So one thing I did when I was starting out was this thing called Project Euler. So it gives you a bunch of sort of computational math problems that would be incredibly difficult to solve by hand, but maybe you could. But it's much easier for a computer to say check 1,000,000 or 1,000, however many cases of something, and then tell you the answer immediately. And working on problems like this really helped me develop my programming skills.
Okay, my answer, I guess, besides programming, there are a lot more in computer science. I want you to spend time thinking. It's very important to be creative. So computer science is a very creative science. So you not only learn what's out there, but also everybody can invent. So so be creative and don't be buried by all the material there. And these are the past, which are important, but still the future. All right. So think deeply and think broad. It should be out of the box if you could. Be as brave as possible, right? Zuckerberg started Facebook when he was a freshman, I guess, right? So be brave.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And okay, so now we'll move on to our next question, which is describe your experiences within the fields of computer science at your current or past projects, internships, and workplace. So just basically describe your experiences within the field of computer science at any job or in like your high school experiences.
Okay, I'll go quickly and first because I think compared to the other two speakers, I'm quite early on in my like experience. But I think so. Last summer, I worked at the Language Technologies Institute at CMU, which was basically doing some natural language processing or artificial intelligence work. We use like Google, we use Google Translate and things like that day to day. So there's a lot of like artificial intelligence and NLP that goes into that. And so kind of my job was creating a benchmark to like evaluate how much utility different systems give us. And the NLP and AI yeah, and like this technology gives us. So that's what I did last summer. I am actually trying to get some more industry experience because that is kind of what I want to do after I graduate. So I've also currently been interviewing a lot and like preparing for interviews a lot for internships. So if anyone wants to like know about that, I can also talk about that. But yeah, that's it so far.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so would Charles like to go next?
Sure. So I don't directly work in computer science, but I work in math, and I think a lot of things I do are pretty close. So one area where computer science has helped me a lot is just being able to try out a lot of concrete examples for very abstract problems. So oftentimes when I'm thinking about a math problem or trying to prove some kind of theorem, it's very abstract and it's very hard for me to sort of get my hands on the objects that I'm thinking about and understand what's going on. And being able to program, even though it's not directly relevant to me, has helped a lot by allowing me to sort of work with a lot of concrete examples and develop intuition that way. So I'd say that's one way that using computer science has helped me. And another one is that there are more sort of applied projects I've also been thinking about. So in one, we're trying to model the behavior of, say, waterways on the ocean. And we're trying to understand how you can sort of model these mathematically and try to understand the mathematical objects underlying these. So it's a lot of numerical computations that would be basically impossible to do by hand. And this is another area where computer science has been very helpful. So I can do a lot of experiments or a lot of numerical experiments to sort of verify whatever I'm working on and see that I'm actually making progress.
Okay. All right. So I don't recall exactly my past projects, but the one thing I was very impressed when I was at Berkeley was that most of the grad students, they have industry experience. So, but you're getting into college, so it's still too early for me to share that experience. But I would encourage you to explore industry internships early, maybe when you are the second or third year even. The earlier you're exposed to the industry, the better. It's very important that you understand the outside world. You know, I've been with the university for a long time, and often we have a solution trying to find problems, but it's better that you take the opposite direction. You see enough problems, then you figure out solutions. So industry exposure is important. And also I like to encourage you in this early stage that you think about going to grad school, okay? As a faculty in a university, I encourage students to explore graduate degrees. At least I think nowadays to be, I would say, competitive, you need a higher degree if possible. That doesn't mean you don't work with the industry. You work with the industry early in the stage, and even in the process, you can continue to work with the industry, but to get a higher degree is almost inevitable nowadays. Some of you may pursue PhD in the future, and I would like to encourage that as well. There's still a lot to be explored in computer science.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so now I would like to move on to our Q&A section, which is our final segment of this program in which we answer the questions everyone asked in the chat box. So make sure if you have any questions to write them out. This can be centered to one person. Like if you have any questions about high school, about entry into college, make sure to talk to Catherine and ask questions to Catherine about these things. And then you have any questions further beyond high school, beyond college, make sure to center questions to Professor Sheu and to Mr. Wang. So that would be great. Okay, so our first question comes from Ethan, who is in 10th grade and in University High School. So he asks, what language should I start with when trying to learn computer science? So anyone can answer this because this is kind of like centered to.
Python, Python, Python. Are you
Mhm.
guys learning Python in high school?
I think so.
No?
I think some people
Oh,
learn.
okay. Yeah, yeah. It's I highly recommend Python. All right. So if it's not taught in your school, you can take the course from, you're in Southern California, right? Other audience,
Everyone's in Southern California here.
Southern California. How far are you from UCI?
Mm,
I heard University High School, right? That's just right next door, right? But anyways, we have summer course that teaches you Python. From Python, you can get into like machine learning, get into database, you get into like some other areas. So Python, especially if you're interested in artificial intelligence, I think Python will be a good entry for you. That doesn't mean you don't study other programming languages, because actually, from one programming language to another is pretty straightforward, or it can self-pace. So Python is easy to learn. It's lightweighted, initially, at least. So that's my recommendation.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was really, really insightful. Okay, so next we have a question from Joshua Quinn, who's in 12th grade, Orange County School of Arts. And he asks, could you talk more about how important mathematical foundations are to CS? So anyone can answer this.
Charles is in the math branch, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, so I'd agree with what Professor Sheu said earlier, that it's quite important to have sort of like a strong foundation and, maybe some basic math. But, okay, so I'm getting a PhD in math, and this is definitely not necessary at all in order to study CS or to, be successful in CS. So I would say that sort of the way math helps is that you're able to think sort of more rationally about things, more logically, like in the way a computer might interpret what you tell it to do. Because I think one thing which is very common, which is that in my head, I'll be thinking one thing, I'll write some code that says another thing, and I'll have to go and debug it. I'll have to understand what exactly was the disconnect between me and the computer. And in that sense, I think sort of being able to think mathematically about certain things has helped me. But there's not any particular field of math that I would say, you need to go and read books in this field to understand this field in order to begin CS. So that said, I wouldn't say there are any hard prerequisites, but sort of just a basic, grasp of foundational math should take you a long way.
I also
Maybe
want
other people. Yeah.
I also wanted to say how I think also Professor Sheu touched on this, where like depending on like what area you want to go into CS, I think there are different types of math that you need. Like for example, in my last AI course, I think we used a lot of just like logistic regression. So there was like a lot of there was some calculus, some matrix like some derivative things. Like that you need to remember how to do or know how to do. So I think that also part of the reason why basics really helps is like depending on where you go in CS or what kind of CS courses you're taking or what part you're doing research in, I think the math you need to know is different. But if you know the basics, it should be easier to kind of learn the math you need to know kind of to do like the research or do the CS that you have to do. So I would just say, yeah, once again, I think it depends on which area of CS you want to go into, but being really good at like the basics never hurt.
Okay. Well, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, math is important. Let me just share with you my experience. After I got my degree, I started teaching, and for quite some years, I thought that math, I learned calculus, I learned, all these nice things, but these are not really used too heavily in computer science. Because in computer science, we pretty much work on digital discrete math. All right. But until one day, so for example, there are four major areas in computer science, traditional computer science: database, programming language, architecture, and algorithms, I think. Only algorithms work on discrete math. For database and computer architecture and programming language, the math is, I would say, quite limited until one day, bioinformatics became important. Then at that point, I discovered that my math was not enough, because to model the human body as a system, it's not difficult to come up with the equations, but to solve equations becomes a problem. And these are continuous problems. All right. And that was my first shock. And the second shock was, now lately, the last decade, machine learning became popular. And I found statistics is important. And statistics is the only course I didn't take when I was in college or in grad school. So, oh my God, that was the second shock. But still, I think math represents a important path or important area or foundation for computer science, for computer scientists to solve problems in other areas. But I still think that creativity is very important, because you have to find problems and find a creative way to solve them. And discrete math is as important. Graph theory, I don't know whether you learn graph theory or not, but graph theory is used very heavily in computer science. Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now our next question is from Helen in 10th grade, Northwood High. And her question is specifically for Catherine. And she says, I heard that nowadays the application for CS programs is very difficult. What are the experience/accomplishments that you think helped you get into Harvard?
Yeah, sure. I think like your application can probably be like split up into a few categories. So the first one is like kind of your stats. So that's like the SAT, your GPA. And I would advise that those be really, really strong, because I think even if you have wonderful extracurriculars and everything else, I think it's gonna be kind of like you have to make up for poor stats. So I would suggest like get a really good GPA, get a good SAT score. Those are kind of like the basics. And then beyond that, although I know some schools, might not don't require SATs anymore. So I don't know, maybe that's your choice at this point, but yeah, like the basic things. And then the next part of your application, I would say, is your extracurriculars. This is like the part I think which should really make you stand out as an applicant. So for example, I always knew that I was really interested in math and computer science. So I really tailored my application to kind of be involved in those areas. So for example, I did a lot of math competitions. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have heard of like AMC and Amy and things like that. So I really did a lot of those. But beyond that, I also just made sure that, for example, even my volunteer work was very like STEM focused. Like I taught math to like underserved school districts. I was a participant in STEAM for All. I started my own physics club in high school. So I think even like my volunteer work and everything else was just very STEM focused. So I think I just really, using your extracurriculars, you should just really demonstrate to schools that you're interested in the field that you want to pursue. So for CS, that would be like math, CS, physics, a lot more of those, like, those things. So yeah, that would be my advice. And then I guess the third part of your application is just like recommendations and essays. Once again, at least this is my strategy. Even for my essays, for example, I wrote a lot about, I didn't focus too much actually on my resume, I didn't talk a lot about math or the math competitions I went to, or like a lot about STEAM for All, because I think this is where your personality should shine through. So I would like advise you to like write about something you actually very much care about. I think that was also the advice that I got from a lot of my upperclassmen, telling me to kind of like not focus too much on the stuff on my resume, because they already know that. They want to like get to know you. So yeah, that's what I would say. Get good grades or good stats for your extracurriculars. Really make sure that they show what you're interested in. So it sounds like you're interested in CS, and make sure that your extracurriculars demonstrate that to colleges. And the third thing is for your, essays, make sure that you're not just regurgitating what's on your resume, but honestly trying to communicate with colleges who you are as a person.
Thank you so much. That was really, really like insightful, honestly, for me too, because I'm also in high school. So, okay, so the next question is from Emily Lee, who is in 9th grade from Beckman High School. And she says, what should we do in high school as a future computer science major in college? So this can include things like courses we should take in high school and the kinds of extracurriculars we should do. So again, I think this is a little bit more catered towards Catherine, because she asks about like experiences in high school. So Catherine, would you like to answer?
Actually, I actually didn't like take any computer science courses. So I know friends who like took like, like AP computer science or things like that in high school. I actually never really went that route. However, I did very much take, for example, AP statistics. I took AP calculus and like a lot of the foundational courses that, even in college you would need to take in order to become a computer science major. Because I think most colleges require you to take like a year of calculus, a year of linear algebra, things like that, if you want to pursue computer science. So like, I think what was already reiterated a lot in this session is the need to make sure you have a strong foundation in mathematics, not just because it helps you with a way of thinking. I think thinking about computers and thinking about math, it's a very similar way of thinking. I think as both Professor Sheu and Charles said, it's very much like a more logical way of thinking that I think not everyone gets right away. So I think taking those courses that like foundational courses like AP Calc and AP Stats would really help you. Other than that, I think for extracurriculars, I already like mentioned this in my last answer, they just need to really show it to colleges. I think that you're interested and committed in this on this path. So I don't know. I think, for example, doing things like orchestra and doing things like art, I also did them, and I think they're really fun and they also have a lot of merit on their own. But I really think you should pick like just a few extracurriculars that are in the STEM field that you really enjoy, that you really love, and you're willing to put a lot of time into, and you're able to speak about them very passionately to colleges and like show some sort of results, right? So like, for example, if you're interested in math competitions, how did you perform? If you're interested in physics or whatever, did you start a club? How many people were in this club? Be able to show action and then show the results of those actions.
I think this also ties into a little bit a question from Ravi in 11th grade. And he states, I would like to do internship at UCI this summer. How should I approach? So this is a bit more catered towards Professor Sheu. So take it away.
Okay. Yeah, this is one reason, I wish to talk to high school students as well. I just recently started a new project. It's called Encyclopedia 2.0. If you spelled out encyclopedia number 2 .0.com, you would get an idea. We're hiring assistant editors, and the idea here is to, that's another thing. I thought that I would give a talk today, but actually it's a panel. But there are 4 areas in artificial intelligence. I assume that everybody is interested in artificial intelligence, but I divided into 4 pillars. The number 1 is classic AI, which deals with search, reasoning, planning, and so forth. Second is modern AI, this machine learning. The third pillar is humanized computing that includes machine vision, includes natural language understanding, and so forth. And the fourth one is semantic computing. Semantic computing, I started this back in a long time ago. And it's about integration. one failure that we had in the past was to start problem solving from scratch. And our theory is that we have to assume that there's a lot of knowledge available already. And the question is how to synthesize solutions. So, but this encyclopedia tried to, I wouldn't call it upgrade, but try to come up with another viewpoint of encyclopedia. And I would think there are a lot of YouTube videos out there already. So how to integrate them together into an encyclopedia that is more fun, that's easier to absorb. It's not for research, but it's more for your knowledge. We hope to increase, to broaden the breadth of, well, yeah, like what I said, I hope that students can know more. I talked to MBA students and I was surprised that at different universities, I was surprised that they didn't know that much about the real world. If you ask them how many specialties are there in finance, in the finance industry, I really couldn't find any one of them to be too knowledge about the real world. So I'm hoping to come up with something that can bridge the students in high school, in college, even with the outside world, the real industry. So that was my motivation, and I need help from students, high school students. Your experience, your knowledge can help middle school students, even elementary students. And I need help from college students so they can help college students, high school students, and so forth. So if you're interested, please contact me, and I'll be very happy to work with you. But you have to be committed. Okay, one thing I found from my past experiences was that even for undergrad students, we consider them to be unreliable. Well, probably because you're too busy. So being responsible and being committed it's very important. Anyway, you have my email, right? It's psheu, psheu at uci.edu. All right. Let me know.
It would also be great if you could like type in the chat your email, just so like they can
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Hold on.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so
We just started, so it's a good time to join.
So next we have a question from Miriam in 11th grade from Westlake High School. And she says, it's hard for me to tell what CS projects match my skill level. And she says, which is not high at all. That's okay. And she says, how can I figure out what project is suitable for me? So I think this would cater more towards either Professor Sheu or Catherine, because they have a bit more experience in like the actual field of computer science. But Charles, feel free to also talk about it.
I'll let the two young fellows answer this question.
Sure. I don't know. I think I also have trouble with that. I think unfortunately, when you first look at a project, I honestly think they all feel daunting. Even now, like when I mean, of course, I'm still pretty early on learning CS and stuff like that. But like, you know, in my junior year, I still like go to class and I get a project and I still think to myself, like, this looks way too hard. Like, I can't do it. This looks, I don't know. I don't think I have the skills for this. So I think, unfortunately, I don't think there's like, actually, in fact, I think if you look at a project and you're like, oh, I know how to do everything on here, then it's actually probably, you know, a little bit too easy, right? Because I think the whole point of like doing computer science projects and things like that is like pushing yourself, like learning to do something new. So in fact, unfortunately, probably my best answer to this question is just like, you know, try it. And like, if after like 5 hours, you don't find yourself anywhere, even with help like Googling things and even with help like with YouTube videos or things like that, then I think the project is like probably a little bit too hard, right? But as long as like you find yourself making progress, like even if it's just a little bit of progress, even if it, you know, takes you an hour to like complete one little part, I would tell you, I would say continue. I think the most important part of like CS and like programming is like that kind of persistence, like the willingness to keep going, even if you feel like you're making really, really small progress. So yeah, I would just say like, you know, if you find a project, like pick it up and, you know, just try to start. And like, if you really, really see yourself going nowhere in like a couple of hours, even with like help from internet and like help from other people and YouTube videos, things like that, I think that's probably when you would, you know, kind of like something you can do is like make this question easier, right? If you can't do this question after a few hours, like tell yourself, well, what part of it was hard for me? Is it like this particular function? Is it that I don't know this language? Is it that I don't know this framework? Is it that, you know, what is the hard part? And then try to make it like easier by abstracting away that hardest part and then try again. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, that was some great advice, and maybe I'll just try to add on a little bit. So one quick answer is that there's an online forum called Stack Overflow. So if you have a particular problem with some feature that's not working, or some language thing, some language quirk, or some package quirk that you just can't figure out, one thing you can try is just going on Stack Overflow and trying to post a detailed summary of your question, trying to see if somebody else can help you. And then another thing I'll say is that even when I try to do something these days, and maybe I'll go to Google a tutorial and just follow it, often by the time I get to the end, nothing will work. So I've had this experience too many times to count. And I think it's less about saying, you know, this project is too difficult or I can't do this. And it's more about sort of, this is the, you know, maybe a more universal experience than you think. So I think you're probably ready to do a lot more than you think you can. And like Catherine said, a lot of it really is just about sort of sitting there and trying to make whatever progress you can on simplifying the problem, even if it's just a tiny little bit, or, you know, do whatever you can. And you know, it's hard to say, or it's easy for me to say, you know, don't get discouraged. It's hard not to feel discouraged. But as Catherine was saying, I think kind of like the main thing is persistence in many of these things.
That's great. Thank you so much. I definitely think that persistence is really, really key in everything you want to do. So next we have a question from Ryan Hung, who is 11th grade at Beckman. And he says, I wanted to ask what the different opportunities are there going into math majors or CS majors. And he said, I also wanted to ask how useful a CS/math minor would be in more creative industries like graphic design, animation, and others. So, yeah. Catherine, would you like to answer?
Oh, I was thinking like, you know, for the creative one, maybe Professor Sheu could take it because I think you probably know a lot more about like a lot, like, you know, different industries, different things you can do with CS. And then maybe afterwards I can answer a little bit about like, you know, what I feel about my CS stats concentration.
And I've been trying to do that. You know, I discovered that students don't know enough of industry, and even faculty don't know enough of that industry, and that's been a problem. But well, I think you have to know that math is important, at least from AI's perspective, but AI is not just machine learning. Machine learning does require a lot of math. And there are other branches of AI, for example, and computer science in general. AI and computer science, to me, they can be two different disciplines. Because computer science, as I talked about, that there's database, there's architecture, and there's like programming language, and discrete math, there's computer algorithms. So if you don't like math, that means you cannot succeed. That doesn't mean you cannot succeed. Okay, so if you want to do Facebook, or you want to start the Facebook, you know, you don't need math. I don't think Zuckerberg knows math, too much math. So it really depends on your interest. If you don't like math, you really don't have to force yourself. Okay, it's good to have good foundation, but still there are enough creative components there. If you like to design games, I'm not sure if that requires math. So just do what you like to do. It's very important. There's another thing I forgot to mention. For those of you, for the future career, I think you want to develop very strong communication skills. All right, eventually, if you want to have grand success, you have to be a sales. All right, so you have to be able to sell your idea, and communication is very important. Friends are very important. So beyond math, there are other things that you want to strengthen. So did I answer your question? I'm not quite sure, but I just always have a lot to tell students. The mistakes I made, I hope that you guys don't have to make it. You don't have to make those mistakes.
Definitely. I think you hit the nail right on the head. That was really, really good. Okay, so next we have a question from Ryan, who is in 5th grade at Turtle Rock Elementary. And he says, I started to learn programming JavaScript last year. I found it's hard to find the right projects to practice. And usually I thought of something and it turned out to be too much work. Like, for example, I didn't finish it even after thousands of lines of code. So do you have any suggestions on how to find the right projects to practice? So I'm sure that Professor Sheu and Catherine will have a lot to say.
Catherine?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm assuming when you mean like when you say project, I think maybe you mean like designing a web application, maybe designing like a game or something like that. Well, I think, as I was saying before, I think the easiest way to do that. I mean, first of all, I think there's nothing wrong, right, with having an application with thousands of lines of code. I think, most of the things we use these days, like whether it be like an app like Facebook or whatever, is more lines of code than that. So I think there's nothing wrong with kind of working slowly on an application. You don't have to finish it in a day or even in a week, right? This can be like a months-long project, especially because since you're in 5th grade, it can be, really a months-long project. And maybe it's even better to like have a project where you work on it for several months or even a year, and you can be really proud of it at the end of it, as long as you keep going. That being said, I totally understand the frustration of like kind of being like, oh, like, I'm working on this for so long, but there's nothing I can show for it. In that case, what I would say is, like, let's say you're trying to build an application and it's like a game or something like that. And I would first say, design this application and only make it have a few functionalities. So maybe all you can do is, hit the up arrow and see your avatar move up or something like that, like something very simple. Once you've done that, you can take a step back and see, oh, I've done something, and you can feel proud of yourself, and then you can go back to it the next week and say, okay, what can I add to this? Well, now let's, do it so that the next time, like when I hit the down arrow, my avatar also moves. Okay, let's make, an apple, and my avatar tries to eat the apple. So like, I would say like break it down into very small steps. So instead of it seeming like a huge project with thousands of lines of code, it can seem like, many little small projects. I think that's really helped me in the past. I think if you're looking for more like, small contained problems that other people have already given you, I think, for example, there are websites like Project Euler or things like that, where they give you small problems and you just have to write a few lines of code as a solution. I think that's also sometimes fun, right? If you don't want to like build your own huge application, you can go on like websites like Project Euler, and you can, just write a solution with a few lines of code and things like that.
Would Charles or Professor Sheu like to add on to that? Or did Catherine nail everything?
Okay, well, I can add on just a little bit. So yeah, I think it can be daunting to try to approach a large project with many lines of code. But one thing that's always helped me is that I'm always surprised by the availability of packages that other people have written. So often when I'll find myself sort of, finding something difficult and saying, wow, it'd be nice if someone had written this. And I go in Google and I find out that actually someone has written this. Then I can just download their work and just use what they've done. And it saves me a lot of time and frustration, and I get a nice product out of that. So it can be helpful just to make sure that you're not trying to sort of re-implement things that other people have already done and that you could just reuse easily, so you could really get to what you want to work on.
Okay, so also I think that the next question is kind of catered towards all of you guys, and it states, any tips for preparing for an interview for an internship? So does anyone have like advice or like for internships?
Well, I think as I mentioned in the very beginning, I am also currently applying for internships for the summer. They're mainly in the industry. I think it's always scary. I think I've like in this interview cycle already done, a few but it's always very scary. I think what's important to remember is well, first of all, I think you definitely need to prepare. I think preparation is super, super key. There's a lot of websites, a lot of great websites that you can look up for where they give you practice interview questions. You can even search for the company name and common interview questions and practice those. Aside from that, I think, it's really hard to look at every single interview question and prepare for every single one because you don't know what the interviewer will ask, right? So I think getting down the fundamentals of your language. So if you're going to be interviewing in Python or if you're going to be interviewing in C++, make sure you know how to use that language very comfortably. And also, I guess the third thing is, I think also Professor Sheu mentioned this, to be really good at communicating. I think a lot of people overlook the importance of being able to communicate your ideas when you're interviewing with the interviewer. The interviewer also saying do I want to work with this candidate, right? And they're going to want to work with someone who can clearly communicate their ideas and also take feedback. So if the interviewer tells you, hey, why don't you try this approach? You want to make sure, I know it's really hard, especially when you're nervous, but you want to make sure that you're opening, you're listening to what the interviewer's feedback is so you can work off their feedback. Because really what you want to demonstrate is I am a good person to work with. I will listen to what you say and I will also put out valuable ideas. Yeah.
Professor Sheu, I think you're muted.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, what I was trying to say is that don't add too much pressure on yourself. You as a high school student, usually, I have to be honest with you, you're not as competitive as Catherine to find an intern. And there's only a limited number of internships available, especially you want to work with large companies. So it's not your fault because you're too young still. Okay, but the future is yours. So you try your best. If you can get some opportunities, that's great. If you cannot, just continue to improve your skills. But one day you'll find it easier. All right. So so while you are not able to find a good opportunity, there are just a lot of other just improve your knowledge, for example. All right. I suggest that you increase the breadth. You understand more about what's around. That's important. Okay. You're still young. You don't have to worry about, butter and bread. It's not your job yet. All right. So just relax. Okay. And still, your first job now is to getting a good college. It's important. I have to tell you, it is very, very important to getting to a good college, as good as possible. Like what Catherine and Charles were able to make. That label goes with them, and with you too as well, for your whole life.
So on this note, I think this kind of leads really well to, I think, our last question of the day, which is it true that you have to go to an amazing college to be successful with computer science?
Maybe let me answer this question.
Mhm.
It would be good if you can get into a very amazing college. All right. But there are only a limited number of seats available, right? So if you cannot, there are other opportunities for you. So if you cannot get into Harvard, you can come to UCI. Okay, UCI is frankly speaking second tier, but you have to know how many universities are there. They're not even ranked. And graduate school is another opportunity. I've seen a lot of good graduate students, top graduate students. So you can move on to Berkeley, Stanford, for your grad degree. Or if you, so the computer science is good. The other majors, being a doctor is still very good. I tell you, medicine is, it cannot be wrong. Okay, business, you name it. So what I'm trying to say is that there are different majors. You want to pick a good major, that's important. Pick a good university if you could. But if the timing is not right for you yet, you wait. Just be patient, be persistent. Okay, you will reach it. You would, you will reach your goal. So nothing is fatal. So this is what I'm trying to say. As long as you don't give up. All right. And Catherine and Charles may have an easier start. All right. So that doesn't mean other people cannot start. All right. There's still a lot of opportunities. I remember when I was an undergrad student, that was a long time ago. I asked my professor, should I get into computer science? Seems to me that it's very crowded already. And he told me, there are always opportunities in computer science. So it's a good major. It is. So I strongly encourage you to pursue computer science as your career if you like it. It's going to be painful if you take something that you don't like. All right, never do that. All right, so that's my advice.
Thank you so much. I feel like that advice like soothes us as high schoolers because we always feel like we need to do everything, that like every time we fail, that's like the end of the world. So I feel like thank you.
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think that question will conclude our October guest lecture. So thank you everyone for coming, and I hope that you all really enjoyed this guest lecture and learned something new today. I certainly did, from all these amazing people. And thank you to these 3 amazing guest lecturers who took time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. It was great to hear their wisdom and experience in the field of computer science. So to conclude, we hope to see you in our next guest lecture and future STEAM for All events. So everyone have a great day. And again, thank you so much for coming. So just to add on a little bit, it would also be great if everyone could stay back and take a group photo to commemorate this amazing moment. So I'll stop sharing. And then William, could you take a photo of everyone?
Yeah, so for everyone, for now, if you can like just briefly turn on your camera, and then we can take a quick group photo. So yeah, if you can please turn on your cameras, that would be great. And then I'll take a quick group photo in 3, 2, 1. Okay, cool.
All right, very good.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you especially to our 3 amazing guest lecturers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.